All right, now to President Biden's pledge to cut U.S. emissions in half by 2030. Just this morning, Bloomberg announced plans to team up with Goldman Sachs to tackle climate change. And joining us now, Vice Chair of Global Public Policy and Special Advisor to the founder and chairman of Bloomberg, Mary Shapiro. She previously chaired the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission under President Obama. By the way, the first woman to do so. You have a lot of firsts in your career. I want to ask you about the pivotal role you think that companies can play, the finance sector specifically, in the climate crisis. What can they do?
The public sector has a hugely important role to play in combating climate change, and we've seen this really important steps from the Biden administration in taking a whole government approach to climate. But the private sector has a role to play too, because the public sector cannot do it alone. So I think there are a couple of things. One is the private sector can be very engaged in directing capital to green infrastructure in developing markets, but also the financial markets have an important role to play in making sure that investors are well informed about the climate risks of companies in which they want to invest. If investors and lenders and insurers understand the risks of climate that individual companies face through disclosure, then they'll be able to direct their investment dollars to those companies that are doing the best job of identifying, managing, and mitigating climate risk.
And so it's the transparency you're looking for, so investments can be made and maybe different decisions would be made. You think it would actually impact the climate crisis?
There is no doubt at all in my mind that transparency is the key to combating climate change from the private sector. Under Mike Bloomberg's leadership, something called the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosure, which developed a framework that's now supported by over 2,000 organizations, representing a market cap of $22 trillion and nearly 1,000 financial institutions responsible for assets of almost $200 trillion that have committed to this kind of disclosure about climate risk that companies face and financial institutions face. When people are armed with that kind of information, they can direct their investments towards those companies that are the most sustainable.
I'm curious, on a broader level, now that the Biden administration has rejoined the Paris Agreement, what do you hope to see next in the U.S. policy even on climate change?
Well, I think, first of all, I think it's wonderful that we've rejoined and that we're stepping up to share leadership on this issue with the rest of the world after basically sitting out for 4 years. So I think that it sends a wonderful message to the rest of the world. The next step I hope to see is that the Securities and Exchange Commission, the agency I used to chair, will do mandatory climate risk disclosure rules that will ensure that we get comparable, consistent, decision-useful information about climate risk into the marketplace.